talking about the White House card and how he wasn't offered $8 over $15 million and how he felt the fight was worth more. So I just wanted to get your response to that, essentially.
Jon Jones tweeted that he was offered not $1 more.
Jon Jones was never fighting on the White House card. How many times I gotta say this? He was never fighting on the White House card. I literally have done two press conferences talking about this. These guys went out, found everything that they thought was available and possible, and then I picked the fights. There's no way in hell I was putting him on the card, no matter what the money was. Jon Jones was never gonna fight on the White House card.
He confirmed when I said, you know, they couldn't come to a deal, and now he's confirming specifically the number. Here's a tweet from him over the weekend. I was ready, willing, and physically able to step in. I was willing to take substantially less than the Aspinall ask, but they wouldn't budge $1 over $15 million. I felt like our fight was worth more. And so that has become the new baseline, $15 million. So, hey guys, we saw the 15. We know you saw it as well. Great. That's the new number. So a fighter comes out, Jon Jones asks for 30. No, it's going to be 15. That's the new number. Even though Jon Jones, Conor Benn, arguably the greatest MMA fighter of all time, we're now putting him in the same bucket as Conor Benn.
Fight fans, let's dive straight into this explosive situation that's tearing the UFC apart from the inside. Jon Jones dropped a bombshell tweet that exposed the entire business operation, confirming he was completely prepared to step into that octagon, but the UFC refused to budge beyond their insulting $15 million ceiling. This isn't merely about contract numbers, it's about basic respect and acknowledging true worth. Putting the undisputed GOAT of mixed martial arts in the same financial category as an up-and-coming prospect like Conor Benn for what should be a historic White House spectacle represents a blatant slap in the face to everything Jones has achieved. By publicly revealing these specific dollar amounts, Jones is strategically fighting back against what he rightfully perceives as a disgraceful devaluation of his legendary status in this sport. The battle lines have been drawn, and this conflict is escalating rapidly.
I felt the fight was worth more, so I just wanted to get your response to that, essentially.
Jon Jones tweeted that he was offered not $1 more.
Jon Jones was never fighting on the White House card. How many times I gotta say this? He was never fighting on the White House card. I literally have done two press conferences talking about this. These guys went out, found everything that they thought was available and possible, and then I picked the fights. There's no way in hell I was putting him on the card, no matter what the money was. Jon Jones was never gonna fight on the White House card.
So
Dana White emerges in typical fashion, vehemently rejecting any suggestion that Jon Jones was ever considered for the White House card. He's practically foaming at the mouth with his aggressive denials, hammering the same message repeatedly as if repetition creates reality. However, his intense defensiveness doesn't automatically equal honesty or accuracy. This goes beyond simple fact denial. It's a calculated dismissal of Jones's entire account of events. Consider this logic. If Jones was never truly under consideration, never even in the conversation, then why would serious high-level negotiations and discussions take place at all? Dana's assault directly targets Jon's credibility and standing, trying to frame his statements as complete fabrications rather than addressing the legitimate payment disagreement that obviously occurred.
Jon's numbers, everything he's saying, I've heard as well from multiple sources, only to not actually be serious about putting him on the card. So why the hell were they negotiating? Why were they talking to his lawyer? Why were they talking to his team? Why were they even getting into numbers at all? Like, why even call the guy if he was never going to be on the card? Which, to be fair to Dana, he has been saying that from the beginning. Why were other members, Hunter Campbell, of his team, speaking to members of Jon's team, negotiating, talking numbers, talking interest, if he was never ultimately going to make, like, why waste everyone's time?
Here's where Dana's narrative completely collapses under scrutiny and reveals its fundamental flaws. If Jon Jones was genuinely never intended for the White House card, as Dana White declares with such forceful certainty, then explain why UFC executives, including top-tier Hunter Campbell, were actively engaged in detailed negotiations with his representation. Why invest precious time discussing concrete figures, exploring genuine possibilities, and examining realistic scenarios for this historic bout? You don't waste valuable resources negotiating with the greatest fighter alive for a globally televised event if you have zero intention of actually booking him. This glaring contradiction between Dana's public statements and documented reality raises massive red flags. It exposes his carefully constructed story as either desperate damage control or complete disregard for truth, effectively undermining Jon Jones's public credibility.
Because if you truly didn't want this guy on the card, trust me, they wouldn't pick up the phone. They wouldn't speak to him. They did want him on the card. They just didn't want to pay over $15 million to have him on the card. They didn't want to break that number. And so that's what this is. Do you think Hunter Campbell, busy guy as he is, truly the straw that is stirring the drink, that is the UFC, you think this guy is wasting a second of his time doing stuff that's not going to amount to anything? You think he's speaking to Conor's team, his lawyer, he's doing all of this stuff, crunching them, whatever it is, if ultimately he knows that this is going to just...
Exactly right, and this observation cuts to the heart of the matter with surgical precision. If the UFC genuinely had no interest in featuring Jon Jones on that card, if they truly wanted him nowhere near the event, they wouldn't have even answered the phone when his team reached out initially. They wouldn't have squandered a single minute of Hunter Campbell's extremely valuable time conducting meetings and exploring possibilities. The undeniable reality, as this analysis perfectly captures, is that they desperately wanted Bronze on the card. They craved his star power immensely. They simply refused to exceed that rigid $15 million boundary, unwilling to budge even slightly on that figure. Dana White's hostile response focuses less on Jones's actual qualification for the event and more on preserving the UFC's financial control over their entire pay structure. They desired their biggest American superstar for this massively patriotic, globally watched spectacle, but completely rejected his market valuation, opting instead to weave this elaborate fiction of disinterest, rather than admitting a failed negotiation where they couldn't afford his asking price.
To say that, but Jon is calling their bluff. And so to see this relationship that was very kumbaya-ish not that long ago now dissolve into this is fascinating, because Jon is coming out there and putting out tweets saying, hey, nah, I was talking to them and I could have fought. What's that tweet about the 99% of the roster? He said something to the effect of yeah, I may be banged up, random thought, arthritis hurts, it doesn't make you cripple, I'm still smashing 99.47 to be exact.
This represents the absolutely captivating aspect of this entire explosive situation unfolding before us. Jon Jones is boldly challenging the UFC's authority, publicly exposing them to the entire world, and the previously harmonious relationship between Bones and the promotion, which seemed so solid after his heavyweight championship victory, is crumbling in real time. Jones isn't quietly voicing complaints through private channels or behind-the-scenes whispers. He's actively using social media platforms, specifically Twitter, broadcasting detailed information and revealing actual negotiation figures that typically remain confidential. This constitutes a direct, strategic challenge to the UFC's tightly controlled narrative and their monopoly over information flow. It demonstrates Jon Jones flexing his market power and worth, proving he's absolutely unwilling to allow Dana White to dominate the complete story and manipulate public perception any longer. This public assault on the UFC's transparency and integrity signals a genuine foundational shift in their professional relationship that may be permanently damaged.
Because why wouldn't he throw out that number? They were offering him that number last year, but I guess what they learned is, yesterday's price isn't today's price. And so he went back to the 30, which is the number I told you about last year as well. They said no. Went back to the 15, because that's the new number. That's the new hot button number. Lord help us if they offer Conor McGregor 15, which I don't think they'll be that cheap to do. I think everyone recognizes he's worth more.
The financial dynamics of elite fighter compensation, particularly for a legendary talent like Jon Jones, remain perpetually controversial and fiercely contested throughout this industry. The analysis emphasizes a vital factor that cannot be overlooked or dismissed. Yesterday's market rate doesn't reflect today's valuation, correct? Markets evolve, worth fluctuates, negotiating power shifts constantly. Jones requesting $30 million, a figure that was previously discussed and apparently seriously considered at some stage, only to face an inflexible, non-negotiable $15 million ultimatum, demonstrates a stark and dramatic reduction from the UFC's perspective. This extends far beyond Jon Jones and his individual circumstances. It establishes a troubling precedent for every top-tier fighter across the complete roster. If the undisputed greatest of all time faces a hard ceiling at $15 million, what implications does that carry for everyone else? It broadcasts an unmistakably clear message throughout the organization to every athlete monitoring this development. This financial pressure from the UFC essentially dictates the monetary value of its premier talent, and Jones is completely justified in resisting this publicly.
The dirty laundry out there. He's saying, they offered me 15. And let's just talk about it. I know Zuffa Boxing, TKO, Ring is all different, but like, in what universe can you actually explain to the world that Jon Jones is worth as much as Conor Benn? And where are all those people? You know, I saw a lot of people writing things about like the ticket sales for Wardley and Dubois before those tickets were even on sale. Where are those people with the seating charts for Tottenham Hotspur on April 11th? Because it seems like those are struggling right now. Maybe, just maybe, Ben needed you.
This commentary brilliantly exposes the fundamental absurdity of the complete situation in ways that cannot be ignored or rationalized. How can Jon Jones, arguably the most accomplished mixed martial artist in history, receive financial compensation equivalent to an emerging boxer like Conor Benn? The analysis correctly challenges this flawed reasoning, especially considering the TKO Group's comprehensive combat sports umbrella, uniting various promotions and athletes under one corporate structure. This transcends simple pay comparisons, encompassing mainstream appeal, cultural influence, and historical significance. Suggesting these two competitors occupy identical monetary categories, that they generate comparable event value, isn't merely misleading or inaccurate, it's genuinely offensive to Jones's accomplished legacy and his demonstrated box office appeal, spanning over a decade. This financial disrespect toward Jones's established worth directly fuels the existing tension and this increasingly public, increasingly bitter dispute we're witnessing unfold.
Where all these entities are together, you have to think that this side of the fence is going to look over at that side of the fence and say, like, wait a second, you're paying X amount to a guy who's done this much, then I deserve this much. This is all the stuff that Eddie did predict. Now, again, I don't think it's going to lead to like a revolt and all that stuff, at least not now, at least not yet. But we are seeing it play out quicker than I thought. I didn't expect it to be this fast.
Couldn't agree with anything you said more. I think I think Jon Jones has been criminally underpaid throughout his career. He should probably have 100x the money
The TKO merger, combining UFC and WWE into one colossal combat sports entertainment corporation, was promoted as an exciting new chapter of expanded opportunities for all participants involved. Nevertheless, as numerous observers predicted from the beginning, it's simultaneously generating significant internal conflict regarding athlete compensation and payment frameworks. When competitors observe what others within the same corporate combat sports ecosystem earn, what boxers receive, what WWE performers command, it naturally elevates their expectations and sense of appropriate worth. The observation about Jon Jones being severely underpaid throughout his distinguished career, despite being the premier star and most skilled fighter, resonates powerfully and rings completely accurate. Dana White's inflexible position, therefore, isn't merely resistance to Jon's immediate financial demands for this specific bout, but a comprehensive long-term approach to preserve current compensation structures and suppress fighter pay despite the company's valuation reaching billions. This controversy essentially represents a concentrated example of the broader persistent fighter compensation debate that remains perpetually unresolved.
The fans of this sport, I don't think give a shit. Like, I don't think the logic of Jon Jones should be worth more matters to them. They all see these guys as overpaid, spoiled babies, regardless of what they're making, even if the reality is they are criminally underpaid. From Conor McGregor on down, every single one of them is underpaid because they could be making more and they generate so much more for this company, being the UFC and TKO. But I don't think fans are sympathetic to that plight. The fighters don't seem to care, so it ultimately...
This is a hard... This delivers a brutal but absolutely essential reality check that demands acknowledgement and discussion. Average fans and casual viewers frequently show little sympathy for fighter payment disputes whatsoever. The widespread perception of pampered, entitled athletes who should express gratitude persists among the fan base. Despite the actual financial reality where many competitors are severely undercompensated relative to their contributions to organizational success and the UFC's enormous revenue generation, this fan apathy serves as a powerful weapon for the UFC and Dana White. It enables Dana to aggressively dismiss fighter complaints, including Jon Jones's legitimate concerns, without experiencing meaningful public criticism or pressure from pay-per-view consumers. This indifference from the audience effectively neutralizes potential organized resistance from fighters and permits Dana to maintain his uncompromising stance on athlete demands, confident that public sentiment won't influence him or force concessions during negotiations.
To the world, Dana's not going to sit up there and say, yeah, we couldn't come to terms with him for the White House card on Donald Trump's birthday. The easier thing to say is he was never going to be on the card, right? He's not going to admit to the freaking, White House that, hey, we couldn't come to terms with the biggest American name in the sport, the greatest of all time. Like, think about it logically, guys. This is a fight card on the White House in celebration of a.
The analysis highlights the precarious political balancing act that Dana White must navigate in this particular scenario with extreme care. Publicly admitting that the UFC failed to reach agreement with Jon Jones, America's greatest fighter in the sport's history, for a landmark White House card celebrating Donald Trump's birthday would constitute an absolute public relations catastrophe of massive proportions. It would portray the organization as weak, incompetent, and small-minded. It's significantly easier and politically smarter to definitively declare that Jones was never intended for the card, that inclusion was never seriously considered. This isn't simple dishonesty or memory lapse. It's a calculated political strategy to preserve dignity with the Trump administration and protect the UFC's reputation among influential stakeholders crucial to the company's future success. Dana's rejection of Jones's account is therefore intentional and deliberate, designed to control the story for powerful allies and political connections, not merely for fans or media consumption.
We're going to be on the card. And so then let me ask you, for someone in attendance, one of the great media members in attendance, well then, why did you guys negotiate with him? Why did you have those conversations with him? Did you really offer him 15? Yeah, he's going to say, well, we went out there and we asked everyone. What? You don't do that. You don't just cast this freaking bait all over town and hope that one of them hits and then you walk back to it doesn't work that way. What is this? This is bizarre.
The mental gymnastics necessary to accept Dana White's statement literally are genuinely bewildering and completely illogical. The analysis perfectly captures the ridiculousness of what we're expected to believe as factual. Why participate in negotiations if no agreement is possible? Why discuss specific monetary amounts and contract terms? Why involve senior executives like Hunter Campbell in extended meetings and conversations? If the athlete was genuinely never intended for the card from the initial stages, this contradicts how legitimate business operates at professional levels. Dana White's repeated aggressive denials, despite clear evidence of negotiation and discussion, constitute a direct assault on basic reasoning and common sense. It honestly demonstrates his authority and influence within this industry that he can present such contradictory information and still expect public acceptance without questioning or resistance.
For $30 million, don't forget, he was worth $15 million this time.
From the
he was worth $30 million last
point
time.
of view, he's worth $15 million right now, though. That's
Right.
what we know.
Apparently, yeah.
So what is that just as high as they can go now? Deontay Wilder money has become Conor Benn money.
A wild thing. But I
Less
think
than a year ago, that number was 30.
Agreed.
And if I'm Conor McGregor, that's my start. That's my minimum. If you were going to give Jon Jones $30 million at any point in his career, I'm worth double that. That's base.
Jon Jones's public revelation of negotiation details, particularly that $15 million baseline figure, represents an absolute game changer for other superstar athletes in the UFC, most significantly Conor McGregor, who consistently conducts these negotiations publicly. As perfectly highlighted, if Jones received a $30 million offer during discussions, then McGregor's minimum opening position for any comeback fight would logically start at double that amount, minimum $60 million. This exposure of the UFC's secretive compensation structure provides crucial intelligence and leverage, empowering McGregor with information he previously might not have possessed. This unprecedented transparency forces the UFC into uncomfortable positions during future negotiations, creating cascading effects throughout the entire elite roster, where Dana White's devaluation of Jones could accidentally trigger significantly higher demands from other major attractions. Jon Jones masters many skills, and promotional strategy definitely ranks among them. The commentary notes his shrewd deployment of retirement discussions and even health issues like arthritis as strategic misdirection to control the narrative. This isn't casual conversation or genuine transparency, it's calculated maneuvering to manage expectations, generate fan intrigue, and ultimately strengthen his bargaining position with the UFC. His sudden availability for a White House card immediately after publicly claiming retirement and serious injuries strongly indicates these were orchestrated tactical decisions responding directly to the UFC's initial inadequate offers. This proves Jones isn't passively accepting the devaluation of his worth, he's actively competing at the highest strategic level.
His line continues to be, Jon Jones is never on the card. He's been asked, like, were you negotiating with Jon Jones? We talked to everybody and then he was never going to be on the card. It doesn't make any sense, no doubt, but he can't. How do you force him to tell the truth?
The potential White House card represents an absolutely unprecedented global stage for any fighter fortunate enough to headline such an event, something completely unseen in combat sports history. Hundreds of millions of viewers worldwide, potentially exceeding 1 billion people, could witness this spectacle. This extraordinary exposure dramatically raises stakes for Jon Jones and distinguishes this bout from any previous opportunity. If he indeed faces Alex Pereira in what would constitute a monumental super fight, the victor becomes the people's heavyweight champion, and arguably the most recognizable mainstream fighter on the planet. This amplified visibility and international reach makes the previous $15 million proposal even more shocking and disrespectful considering the platform and exposure involved. The UFC might attack Jones's compensation and attempt lowball tactics, but the platform itself represents separate, immense value that Dana White cannot minimize or ignore, regardless of his intentions. Let's establish absolute clarity about what's transpiring here. The firm conviction that everyone recognizes Dana White's complete dishonesty represents a damning assessment of this entire situation. Dana's persistent illogical denial regarding Jones's White House card negotiations transcends standard public relations management or message control. It constitutes corporate gaslighting on an industrial scale. He maintains a story that defies reasonable expectations and contradicts established facts, apparently immune to contradiction or evidence. This assault isn't merely on Jon Jones's statements and credibility, but on the basic intelligence of media and fans observing this development. It illuminates a deeply embedded power structure where the UFC, through Dana, controls narratives completely, regardless of factual inconsistencies or logical contradictions that everyone clearly sees.